In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you, are the stakeholder in your own survival. And today we are officially out of our resiliency series. We did 5 episodes on the different aspects of resiliency. And that was actually kind of fun, AC.
It was fun. I learned a lot. I think there was a lot of sort of self-reflection-y stuff that went on, you know what I mean? I learned a lot about, it was kind of a vulnerable thing to talk about what it takes to be resilient. And I think that's really important information. And hopefully over the course of 5 episodes and some PhD dude with a bajillion books under his belt, people took something actionable away from those. Because I know I did.
Yeah, Dr. Stephen Taylor was fantastic last week. He was absolutely an amazing guest. I hope we get to have him on again. But it was just very, very eye-opening. And like you said, it was vulnerable. I learned a ton about myself in the self-reflection sphere of, well, maybe I'm not doing all of this right.
Sure. Yeah, no, me too, for sure. And just thinking about resilience as solo resilience and family resilience, and then going into that community neighborhood stuff. It was just really interesting to talk about and really interesting to do research on because, yeah, it's just that unsexy side of preparedness that people don't talk about. It's not beans and it's not bullets and it's not guns. It's how do you mentally, not go crazy in some kind of, SHTF event or just the, flat tire on the side of the road event.
Right. But today, this week, we are getting away from that. We are getting kind of a little different today. So today is actually completely unscripted.
Yeah, this is totally not outlined at all. We just wanted to kind of talk about what we are doing to prepare personally and be more prepared, and what our preparedness journey looks like. Because I think we sit here week after week and say, go buy this or go do this or go read this book. But we never really talk about hey, here's the things that we are personally doing. And I think by talking about the things that we are personally doing, maybe it gives us a little more credibility, but I think also it will give people some kind of actionable intel, because I can tell you personally for myself, I make a whole lot of mistakes. And so hopefully people can kind of learn from those mistakes, the things that I do incorrectly, and it costs time and money and effort. And I can tell you the things that I have done correctly and the things that have paid off. So, if this works out, maybe we'll do this every 4 or 5 or 6 months and kind of reflect back on hey, Chris, what have you done to be more prepared as an individual in the last, 6 months or whatever.
Yeah. So I guess starting out, do we want to set a time frame on this? Do we want to say, what have we done in the last 6 months? Do we want to, since this is the first time we've done this, do we want to say since January 1st? So what have we done since the beginning of 2026?
Totally. Yeah, I think that's fine. What have you done in the last 6 months or even a year? Just the things that you can look back on and say, here's what I have done to be more prepared and more resilient myself in our little worlds. I think that's cool. And I would just, we can just kind of BS with this. And I think, like I said, I still think there's going to be some actionable intel, even if we are just, kind of shooting from the hip here.
Yeah, I agree. And most of it's going to be mistakes. And learning from those mistakes.
Learning from mistakes, right? Exactly. Yeah, you learn from your mistakes, and hopefully other people learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. Well, I guess we can just start wherever, right? One thing that I have learned is keep the boxes tidy. All of the Amazon boxes, all of the packing boxes that everything comes in, I was just tossing them into the garage and built a huge pile of them. Every once in a while, I would break them down and just have piles and piles of broken down boxes. Um, well, those eventually turned into 2-foot high, 3-foot high piles of broken down boxes. And then it became difficult to get the lawnmower out because then I had to move the boxes and then ran
Sure.
out of storage room for other large stuff that was coming in and out of the garage. So finally, I kind of got tired of it. And one weekend, I was frustrated with work. I took some of the bigger ones that we have been saving for things like the underdesk treadmill that we have, that we still have the big box for, and opened that up. It was empty. All right, taking enough boxes to fill that, and then I'm duct taping it closed and I'm hauling it up to the attic. And then I'm taking the next big box that's relatively flat and filling that with boxes and hauling it up to the attic. It cleaned up the garage, still have all of the boxes, but the things that you can do with cardboard boxes in a prepping sphere are innumerable.
Yeah, absolutely. The boxes is a great one. It's so funny to think about that because that's like something like our grandparents' generation did, right? Like, let's just save those boxes. You can put your bags in there. Like that was, they just saved everything. But the boxes are a great one because, like you said, you leave them on the garage floor. Well, not only does it take up valuable real estate, but the rodents love that. Like they just turn that into houses.
Yeah.
And that's a huge issue. So the boxes, obviously, they can be broken down and then turned into boxes later when you need to ship something. If you are somebody listening and you have ever gone to the UPS store to like buy an empty box, you're not prepping right because you should have a garage full of boxes like Chris. So you just grab one of those and use that as your shipping box. But we even did an episode on that about cardboard was one of those things that in a pinch, it actually makes pretty good insulation. There's some serious R value there. If you've got enough room to store some amount of cardboard for all the other things that you want to do with cardboard, in some kind of grid down event, you can turn that into insulation pretty well. And fire starters, right? Great fire starters.
Oh yeah. And now that it's all organized and compressed, it sits about 4 feet high. There's a dog kennel on top of it that we don't use anymore. So it's just sitting there waiting for use. If you have ever received one of our prize packages or swag boxes, it's probably come in a recycled box.
It came in a reused
Amazon
box. That's exactly right. And I don't know how much like conspiracy theory and stuff this is, but man, if we can talk shit on just the recycling program for a minute, like I've noticed this now because like the price of recycling is dirt cheap. Like it doesn't make financial sense to actually recycle. So usually what happens if you go take boxes to the recycling center, they can't burn them here. So they just like wrap them all up, put them on a barge and take them somewhere in the world where they can burn them. So like recycling is actually like worse than throwing shit away these days.
Yep.
It's crazy. So reuse is the way to go. Like that's the thing. That's that sort of upcycle-y thing is, if you think you're doing good by the planet by recycling, like 9 times out of 10, you're not anymore. With few exceptions, there are a lot of things they do recycle. If you are in possession of some rare earth materials, if you have like a pile of germanium or tantalum in your garage, you can recycle that. They will reuse it, I promise. But
yeah, because the price on that is outrageous.
Yeah, right. But like cardboard, it's not good for the environment to recycle that these days. I guarantee you it's going to get thrown away somewhere or it's going to get shipped to India or China and lit on fire because they can't do it here because of our environmental laws. So you're just going to waste a bunch of diesel fuel getting it over there. And I noticed this myself, like at the airport where you've got these recycling bins and it's like, it says, glass here and plastic here and cardboard here and refuse to the dump here. and it's all going into the same thing below those little holes. Like, okay, they're not actually separating it. It's all the trash is going away.
Hey, you want to talk about upcycling? We ordered from Panera, I don't know, back in February, and I got one of their iced teas because I wanted to try it. And I still have the plastic cup sitting next to the bed on the nightstand with the original straw that I just fill with water every night.
Right. Yeah, no, right. Some of these beefier kind of like plastic cups, there is a lot of upcycling you can do with a lot of that stuff. But you're right, cardboard, dude. Unless it's a box that I just don't think I can reship, like it says, explosives on the side and there's like a yellow placard and that kind of stuff. Unless it's something I think I can't reship, then yeah, I usually break them down and keep them, or I don't break down the big one and you kind of little like Russian nesting doll, the little boxes in there if you've got enough room, right? And then you're not breaking them down. But yeah, the cardboard is interesting because you can't do burn piles. You are, right? You can't just go torch off a bunch of Amazon boxes in the backyard.
The HOA would have an absolute conniption fit, and I don't want that kind of fine coming down. Ugh.
Yeah. So I do a fair amount in the not fire season. I'll do a fair amount of burning things that don't fit in the like weekly recycling. So there will be a big Amazon box fire, once every month or so. But you're right. Yeah. Saving the boxes. I never buy a box from like the UPS store because you definitely are getting 10 boxes a week delivered to your house if you're a real prepper.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's something you've done?
I've got my garden area, and I am kind of proud of this because, as people know, I do travel a lot, but I do want to kind of keep the homestead in that kind of hot storage. And so I have a garden area. I want to say it's probably about, let's say like 40 by 70 feet. So pretty big, like a pretty decent sized garden for a normal size yard. I've got a few acres. And it's funny because when I moved in, I bought the home from people that I think were making a fair amount of their own food. Their garden area was larger than that, but they had like kind of 4-foot tall fencing. I wouldn't even call it. It definitely wasn't deer fencing. It wasn't like chicken wire. It was just like those big 4x4 holes. So anything was coming and going. It was like just sort of like a semi-imaginary boundary of where the garden started and stopped. And I extended that to about 8 feet, I want to say, which is kind of the magic number for deer fence. Deer won't really, generally speaking, they don't want to jump over something unless they know they can clear it. So if it's about 8 feet, deer just won't try, even if it's kind of flimsy. Like your deer fence doesn't need to be that tough. A lot of people use like that plastic fence with like those kind of, springy poles just to extend the fence, the garden fence, the deer don't get in, which works great. But then my first winter, we had elk show up in the yard. And are you in an elk area? I was looking at the elk map, and there is like that northern Tennessee, southern, is it Kentucky right there?
Yeah,
that's got some elk?
They don't really get down this far. Mostly what we have down here in southern Tennessee is like small whitetails.
Yeah, little whitetails. Sure. Yeah, whitetail deer.
Not even mule deer size. They're itty bitty whitetails.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't realize how little of the country actually had elk, because kind of everywhere I've ever been has elk, right? Like all over, that Idaho and Washington, Oregon, the I would say like the western half of Montana and a whole lot of Utah and Colorado. There's elk everywhere, right? But so for those that don't know, elk are not just a big deer. And I think that a lot of people have that in their head. Maybe people who've never seen an elk or hunted elk. They're like, elk are just this massive deer. No, deer are dainty little forest ponies with sticks on their heads. That's a deer. An elk is basically a cow that can run 20 knots and dunk on LeBron James. That's what an elk is. And deer go over things. And if it's too high, the deer goes, nah, not going to do that. Elk go through things. They just go through things. So I had my nice garden fence set up and this beautiful deer fencey thing. And then sort of we don't get elk very often. It's this weird timing where if it is a extra cold kind of later in the year when it shouldn't get extra cold, the elk come down, and it's a bunch of them. So like a dozen of them showed up one day, and they make these trails like cattle do. Like they make a game trail in 5 minutes, and they just plowed through, and they took all of my deer fence with them. So then I got crazy and did this. I have an elk fence. I call it an elk fence. I don't know if that's a real thing, if gardeners do that. I have, for big stuff like that, I have a contractor that I like. I think he kind of does listen to the show. And he's never called me crazy, so that's why he keeps coming back. But yeah, he's like, he sees my vision. He's not like, no, you're building something an insane person would build. He's like, no, I get your vision. So I have this.
At least he keeps it quiet.
At least he keeps it quiet. Yeah, exactly. Like he's not telling anybody. If he was, he'd be like those, the Chinese terracotta builders that just got buried in with the tombs. So no, he keeps it secret. But so and he's got this awesome, what they call like a post hole digger attachment for his Kubota, which is really nice. But I've got these 6x6 pressure treated fence posts, so massive fence posts, and I believe they're 8 feet, and so they're about 1.5 feet stuck in the ground. And then the fencing I used is called 2x4 no climb, so it's like little 2x4 inch holes. So you can't climb it. It's not like chain link fence where you can kind of find a spot to stick your hand. You actually can't. It's just slightly too small to climb. And so I did this whole fence in I want to say about a 40x70, and then, which is pretty decent size for a garden, but I've got everything in there. So 20x20 feet of that in a corner is the chicken area, and they have their own they're kind of sectioned off, so they can't get out of the garden or get into the garden part if I don't want them to, so they don't eat everything. So it's kind of one of those things in the summer, they stick in their own little area, and they have a chicken coop and all that kind of stuff, and they're taken care of. And then in the winter, when I'm not actively trying to grow things, then they get out and they kind of scavenge about in that 40x70 area, and then they go, they go home at night. And I think about those, you've seen these, homestead on a 1/4 acre, and it's these diagrams where it's like, you put your fruit trees here and you put your beans here, and it's, those little diagrams you see. I think we've made funny memes out of them before, and mine is nothing like that. Like, like if any real like gardener, prepper, homesteader saw what my 40x70 area looks like, I would be escorted out of the Preppers Guild. Like I'd be thrown right out of the Preppers Union, because it's not set up that way. But basically, I've got the 20 by area for the chickens, and I've put the spiky things along the top. So, because I've had skunks and possums and raccoons get in there and all kinds of nasty stuff. I've gotten a lot of gunfights in my underwear in the middle of the night. And then I've got a lot of like fruit trees and nut trees that obviously don't need to be in that area, but they just happen to be there. They're all co-located. I like having the garden there. And then I have bees. I have 2 beehives there. And then I have a handful of raised garden beds that I'm actively gardening right now. And, the standard garden fare, mostly just really fancy salad stuff. And then I have a very small greenhouse, like whatever the smallest greenhouse you can get. I want to say like 4x6, one of those ones that comes in it comes in a box the size of a deck of cards, and somehow it makes this 4x6 greenhouse, and it takes years to put together, and it's terrible. But I have this greenhouse, and I'm pretty proud of that, because I have a lot of citrus in there. That's what I'm doing. I have one avocado, and avocados, they have to get pretty old before I think 8 years before they start producing fruit. And I might be right there. I might actually get an avocado this year. But what I did is, everything that's in there, it's pretty packed. But it's all this cold hardy stuff. And I go on Etsy, and you can go on Etsy and look for cold hardy plants, because I'm in an area where it does get, below freezing in the winter, and my water gets hard. And I've got a lot of cold hardy citrus, and it's crazy. I've got a mandarin orange tree and some Persian limes, and the cold hardy stuff, they're also like little tiny dwarf stuff, so they don't get that big.
Okay.
And it's really cool. You can get these, like I said, I get them on Etsy, and they're grafted. And I didn't know they were grafted onto. So I just let like one of the grafts grow that you're not supposed to do for some reason. And they graft them all on something called trifolite. It's trifolite oranges. I think it's a East Asian plant. And it's like basically this deciduous kind of small tree. And they're called trifolite because they have these weird kind of trifolite leaves, these 3 leaves. They're very thorny and they make this really sour fruit that you would never use for anything except maybe some jams, or I think maybe in China they turn them into boner pills or something. Like it's one of those kind of things, but you graft stuff on them and you get these I buy these grafted like Persian limes and Mandarin oranges, and they make fruit. And I think that's amazing. Not a lot. Like the amount of money it takes me to make a lime is pretty insane. But I kind of did it because, one, I just want to see if I could play plant god and actually grow things where they're not supposed to grow. But the other part of that was, citrus, vitamin C is tough to come by in certain areas. And so I wanted to see if I could, I don't want to get scurvy.
Yar, matey.
Yar, the pirate disease. So I wanted to see if I could grow citrus. And you can with a couple of very easy little things. What I did notice, these cold hardy ones, they're made to go down to, low 20s, maybe high teens. And in the greenhouse, it never really gets that cold, even if it is high, low 20s outside. But the issue is that although the plant doesn't die, every winter, like the leaves fall off and then it has to regrow, and you never actually get the fruit because of the shortened growing season. So what I did is I ran an extension cord out there and have a little 500-watt heater, like the absolute smallest space heater you could possibly buy that like goes under your desk, like a tiny little ceramic space heater. It draws almost no power. And, in a grid down event, I could actually run that off my battery solar system. It's 500 watts. It's like 5 light bulbs when you're a kid, right? Like it's not that much power.
Yeah, it's super tiny.
Yeah. And then you have a thermostat set up to that thing. So it comes on, I think, at 34 degrees. That'll turn on and it runs for a little bit and then it keeps at 34 and it turns back off. So in the winter, it actually doesn't run that much. But what that did is it fooled the plants enough that now I have like leaves all year. And then in the early spring, they start budding and you get little flowers. And right now in this little 4x6 greenhouse, I probably have half a dozen to a dozen like viable limes. By September, I'm going to have I'm going to make margaritas or whatever. But the cool thing about that, even though that's not a lot of lime, is that the leaves of these is still very citrusy and totally packed full of vitamin C, or vitamin C, as Bear Grylls says. So, you can make tea out of this. You can dry those leaves and make tea, or you can just you can extract like the citrus oils from those. So even if you don't get fruit, having one of these very inexpensive little Etsy cold hardy grafted rootstock citrus plants laying around, it is producing enough vitamin C to get you across the glacier. So
might have to look into that because
it's cheap money, man.
This is the first year that we have tried gardening, and ours is not nearly as big. It's just a little 8 foot by 4 foot garden bed.
Sure.
And I know I've sent you pictures of this.
Yeah.
And it's this little tiny little garden bed, but we put 7 foot posts in. Well, they're 8 foot posts, but they are 7 feet off the soil level, so they're buried a foot down. And then we put mosquito netting over the top to keep bugs and pests and stuff like that out. And we actually used cut off pool noodles to protect the mosquito netting from rain and stuff like that. So that when the netting gets blown around by the wind or things like that, it doesn't tear against the sharp corners of the posts that we got from Lowe's. So basically everything in that 8 foot by 4 foot bed has 7 feet vertical to grow. We've got potatoes in there, tomatoes of a few different heirloom varieties and a couple of hybrid varieties that aren't heirloom. Strawberries, cilantro, We both love cilantro. It does not taste like soap to us.
Yeah, you don't have the cilantro gene?
Exactly.
Yep.
It tastes absolutely amazing, and the whole backyard smells like cilantro every morning. It's fantastic.
Now, does asparagus make your pee smell?
Not that I've noticed. I actually like asparagus.
I'm wondering if there's like a Venn diagram thing there with the people that think cilantro tastes like soap and the people whose pee smells when they eat asparagus.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I'd like to know.
You would have to ask an actual biologist who's willing to smell people's pee.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would like to know.
I'm not that guy.
Right. So anyway, yeah, you've got more than just the fancy salad in the garden. You've got some real crops, potatoes.
There's some peppers in there. By the end of the season, we're probably going to have way too many potatoes. Planted 5 starters, and when I ran the projection, it was showing 45 to 50 pounds of potatoes. So probably way too many potatoes. There's some carrots in there, strawberries, planted basil. The oregano didn't take. I think that was just the soil I used. It didn't like it. There's some rosemary, sweet peppers, and then green onions. Pretty simple. First year trying it.
Yeah.
Figured keep it easy.
Sure.
And I've sent you pictures. The potato plants and the tomato plants made it all the way up to the top of that 7-foot ceiling and curled back down.
I cannot believe how big your tomatoes are. That's insane. But if you have, do you have if you have like a south-facing either sliding glass door or a good south-facing window, then the thing about the citrus, like these grafted, hybridized little small limes, I have Persian limes, but you can get them in like a key lime as well, which is smaller. You can, put these in a pot and kind of wheel them in and out for the season, which is kind of nice. They look nice in the house. They flower, they smell good, and they're small enough that, you can have these sort of as a hybrid indoor-outdoor plant if you want to. So it's easy enough to do. I will
definitely have to check those out.
Yeah.
The problem with our garden is even with the mosquito netting, I did not realize that when we put the bedding in, have a little battery-powered tiller that uses the same batteries as the drill. And
commonality across your platforms. You're talking my language. I love that.
Uses DeWalt batteries. So it's a little tiller. It's only like 8 inches wide. So tore up all of the actual sod and soil and everything like that, and then laid all of the good topsoil and fertilized soil and everything like that on top of it. Did not know that there were hornworm casings in there. And for anyone not familiar, tobacco hornworms get up to 4.5 inches long. They are what the Hungry Caterpillar, that kids book that we all read when we were in like preschool, kindergarten age, right around there. That's what the Hungry Caterpillar is based on. They are voracious eaters, and anything in the nightshade family, like potatoes, tomatoes, they love it. So 11 of them got into the garden through the soil, and in 2 days' time have completely defoliated all of the potatoes, all of the tomatoes, made it through all of the fruit.
Yeah,
everything.
Those guys are massive. So I imagine there is a chemical solution for that, right?
I ended up going the chemical warfare route, and I ordered some bacteria spray to spray the soil and the leaves and everything like that messes with their digestion. They can't lay eggs. They don't like the flavor of the leaves anymore.
Biological warfare. I like it.
Yeah. So there will be no more hornworms, but manually plucking them is the only way to really get rid of them. The cool thing is they do glow under UV light, so we keep a light just for when we're walking the dogs out in the backyard at night, or if it's raining or something. It has a really bright flashlight on it. It's got a green laser pointer, and it's got a UV spotlight on it.
So it's easy to pick them up at night.
So they glow bright green when you flash them with a UV light. So my wife was holding up the UV light and spotlighting them, and I was going under that little mosquito net and plucking them off, and they've got some grip. They are no joke.
They're sticky. They're sticky. They can crawl upside down. They're like Spider-Man.
And yeah, they've got some little grip in those stubby little grabbers.
But like, I mean, you're a pretty crack shot. I mean, 4 inches, you're within a minute of hornworm, no problem. You could probably just sit up on the deck and take care of those guys.
I could pluck them off with the pellet rifle, but at that point, I'm probably just splashing bug guts against more tomatoes. So
guts all over everything,
and I'd be tearing holes in the mosquito netting and just letting other stuff in. So, but yeah, plucking them off, and they will twist and turn, and they're called a hornworm for a reason. That little horn on their butt, they'll swing around and try to pluck you with it.
That's crazy.
So
that's nuts. Yeah. So that's an expensive lesson to learn. I'm sure you won't have that issue again, but yeah, that's, you could, the thing, like I said, if you're going to go with the citrus, like that doesn't need to go in the garden. You could put that in a little pot and you can roll it in and out in the season. And it's funny, like, this is like French Palace of Versailles, 17th century stuff, right? Like there's a bunch of places in France where they did this with citrus hundreds of years ago. In like 1680, they had like thousands of these citrus trees, and they kept them alive year round through this crazy climate controlled creative architecture and, creative horticulture stuff. And it's pretty amazing, like a lot of passive solar stuff. So citrus is one of those things it's an amazing plant to have if you're somewhere where it doesn't exist. And I'm sure people in Arizona and Florida and California are laughing at me right now. But, if you look at the prepper map, you're looking at people in Wyoming and Montana and Idaho a lot, and the Dakotas, and places where they don't see oranges or lemons and limes in nature a lot. So there is a lot of historical examples of places in the world that citrus isn't supposed to grow, and they've done things far more creative than I had to do. But I was reading up on a lot of the weird stuff they did in Versailles, and there's another town in France, I think, I'll mispronounce, I think it's called Menton, but it's like this weird little subtropical, climate that shouldn't exist. But what they have is the town is made out of all these like dry stone retaining walls. They're called like Restanqua or something, but that's the name of they're these dry walls. And what they did is they built these walls, these retaining walls along the southern slope, and then they planted all these oranges. And then during the day in the winter in Menton, the sun hits these giant rock walls, and it's called solar loading is the physical scientific term for it. And it loads up with all this solar energy, and then at night in the winter, it emits back and keeps frost off the trees in the winter. So there's some really cool stuff that you can look to historical examples, which is kind of what I did when I said I want to do something crazy and try to make citrus myself. So
yeah,
it worked out. And now like I said, a lot of trial and error, because at first I was like, oh, the greenhouse is good enough because I have these cold hardy rootstocks, and it wasn't good enough. So now I've kind of got the little heater, and it's cheating a little bit, but I do feel like that even in an apocalyptic-y, grid downy type sitch, I would be able to keep that 500 watt heater in the greenhouse going on my current, battery inverter solar stuff. So that's kind of my garden thing. But I don't have any like real crops. It's mostly the fruits and veggies. I don't do like the beans. I do peas, actually. Peas, I think. If I was going to guess, I think we talked to Renee about this when we had her on, about what's like the thing you would do that's like the easiest, most amount of calories for least amount of effort. I've always said like Lincoln pea, high protein.
Peas are pretty easy to grow.
They're pretty easy. And not a lot of stuff likes them. Maybe it's just because they're green, but like birds don't really like them that much where I don't have issues keeping pests away from the peas. But, Renee's point, I think, was she had said, you look at what people have done historically in those types. We have historical examples of people living in poverty and impoverished places. And she said, yeah, it was like the potatoes and the cabbage, stuff that you can't kill, and it's pretty nutrient dense, and it's very calorically dense, and it's pretty easy to do. So those are the kinds of things that's like my homestead and hot storage. Like those are the things I'm prepared to do if I have to, is like, your leeks and cabbages and potatoes and things like that.
Yeah. And we've traditionally had difficulty keeping our husky out of the garden, including this year, because there have been 3 nearly fully ripened strawberries that he has found his way to and,
Yeah.
destroyed those. But,
Yep.
I mean, you were talking about crazy things. One of the things that we've done in the past 6 months has been we have collected the materials for and built 2 duplicate sets of Go boxes for both medical and food kits. So we have, and this was one that it took a while to kind of ramp up to it, especially for the trauma kits. But what we have effectively built is not Go bags, but Go boxes, and they are specifically 60 quart, I think, 120 quart and 60 quart storage bins that you can get
Sure.
at Walmart.
Yep.
And we got a whole bunch of medical supplies at Walmart. The look on the cashier's face when we rolled through with all of this was like, who do you work for that you are going to be a mob doctor? Because what is going on here? But there were some things that we could not get from Walmart. You can get gauze, and you can get all of the Band-Aids that you want, and you can get all of the medical gloves and all sorts of basic stuff from Walmart, but you cannot get a wound closure kit from Walmart.
Sure. And
that comes from Amazon.
And I don't think they do hemostatic gauze at Walmart either. I think that's kind of an Amazon thing
They
too,
actually
right?
do.
Did you find a hemostatic gauze there?
Yeah.
A kaolin impregnated gauze or something?
They do sell Quick Clot brand at Walmart. It's hard to find.
Yeah.
But they do sell it there. It's just the smaller packaging stuff. So we ended up going to Amazon for it. But everything that we got was either Walmart or Amazon.
And that's our friend Charlie. If you go to, I think it's our episode 35, right? We have a list of all the things that Charlie told us about in episode 35, and we asked him to come up with a trauma list. So you can go there, and he has an Amazon, like a saved Amazon cart or whatever, of all the things that, as a 68 whiskey combat paramedic, the things he would say, go buy off Amazon. And you can just, I think it's kind of a one-click thing. Say, I want to buy Charlie's.
Add to cart. Yep.
Add Charlie's stuff to cart. So yeah, check out the episode 35 blog on our website, and you can see all of that recommended trauma-y gear.
Exactly. We did basically that plus we added in the Prepper's Medical Handbook by William Forgy. We added in the wound zipper kit. We added in some additional tourniquets. We added in some additional Israeli bandages. We added in burn gel. We added in just all kinds of stuff, and we organized it into trauma, primary wound care, secondary wound care, and then aftercare. And we put all of that into a 60 liter or 60 quart, I should say, storage bin.
Right.
And then for the food, we pretty much have 3 weeks of dry food storage of stuff that we will actually eat. I mean, it's mostly pastaroni and rice sides. Just the super already dry stuff. They're $1.50 to $2 a piece at Walmart, at least where we live. But we removed all of the packaging except for the nutrition facts the allergen facts, and the instructions.
Like just that back panel. Take just the back panel cardboard off, one for every one of those type of meals, right?
Exactly.
Yep,
So
genius.
And then we shoved everything, including the flavor packets, into individual vacuum seal bags, threw in an oxygen absorber, and sealed them up. And each bag is its own fully contained meal with the instructions on there. It says you need this much water. We have a water filter that's good for, I think it's 10,000 gallons. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but it's a gravity water filter, so we don't have to worry about trying to pump it out or sucking through a Sawyer Mini and spitting it into a cup. So there's
Sure.
a gravity filter. But yeah, we've got a full kit. We've got everything we need to make fire in there. We've got all of our pots and pans in there, and everything is duplicated. So if there's a mess kit in one, there's a mess kit in the other, because we have two duplicate sets, two duplicate kits for food, and we have medical times two. There's one.
And how many days or weeks worth of food are we talking about in this thing?
There's 3 weeks worth of dog food already pre-portioned out per day.
Nice.
And there's 3 weeks of food for us pre-portioned out. So everything together, one kit will last us 3 weeks. If we can only get one kit into a vehicle and have to bug out with that, we're good for 3 weeks.
Nice.
If we can take both vehicles, or if we can get both kits into a vehicle, we're good for 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny when you talk about the medical stuff, because recently I do a little bit of online arguing, not like trolling, right? Like I'm not mean to people. I honestly am just like online trying to get people to like listen to our podcast. So I'm like pretty nice to people about it, but I do try to pose questions a lot. And recently on the Facebook, I got into, I will call it maybe a little bit of a disagreement with someone who was a doctor. She was a doctor, like a chief of medicine somewhere in Canada. So obviously someone who knows a lot more about medicine than me, like no issue. But we were talking about, I think I had actually brought up the William Forgy Prepper's Medical Handbook, and I liked that book because I think it does a good job. Anybody who hasn't gotten it, check it out, and we have links to that everywhere. We'll put a link to that in this episode for funsies. But the thing I like about that book is it kind of says, breaks it down. Here's the things you can do for this, whatever is wrong with you. And then it's pretty honest about like, here's when it's time to like come back from off grid. Here's like when you actually need a hospital. And that's what I like, the way he sort of poses that here's when it's time you can't be off grid anymore. Like you're going to die, dude. And I do like the way he does that. But I was in this, I will call it a bit of an argument, because she was basically saying, without modern medical care, like you're going to die. And I said, well, there's been I would say, yes, that's true eventually. But in the last 10 years, there've been some amazing, medical innovations, things like Jace Medical, where, you can go buy a whole lot of these, drugs and, antivirals and antibacterials and whatever that you couldn't get before. And then all the information of how to self-diagnose and self-treat is there as well. And then quick clot, kaolin impregnated hemostatic gauze is another one, because back in the day we talked about this, right? It was kind of that Bernie, cauterizing,
it'll
heat stuff.
Old school quick clot will definitely hurt worse than the firework that took your finger off.
Right. And so it's not that anymore. Like there are these really cool medical innovations. And something she had said to me, she's like, well, yeah, those are neat tools or whatever, but, you're not going to be able to self-treat. And she's like, heart disease and cancer and your hypertension and all these things. And the takeaway for me was, when you look at all the things, and this is a doctor, this is someone who knows way more about medicine than I do. When you look at like who's predisposed to these things, it's like basically what she's saying is, well, yeah, if you're an obese, out of shape smoker with, diabetes, then the end of the world isn't going to be that kind to you. And for me, that's like a call to action. It's like, okay, so maybe get like your diabetes and your obesity and your smoking and your hypertension under control now. So then if something happens, you'll be okay. Like, it was, for me, it was more of a call to action to like, be healthy, dude. Like,
At
like,
least
be
try
healthy. Try being healthy. And and I realized that I'm not, I understand my privilege here, right? Saying that not everybody can just go be healthy. I get that. But dare I say, most people can do something to make themselves healthier. Is that fair enough to say that most people could do something to be more healthy?
Yes, including myself.
Including me all day long. And that's kind of the takeaway for me from that conversation. Her takeaway was, without a hospital, eventually you're going to die. And my takeaway was, like, man, maybe I should like drink water instead of Pepsi one day. Maybe I should, maybe I should go for a walk with the dog instead of doom scrolling the gram one day. And so for me, my takeaway was, oh yeah, like, you're right that unhealthy people are going to have a hard time without modern medical care around. That's true. And
I mean, the end of the world is going to be rough no matter which way you slice it, but
agreed.
it's just going to be that much rougher
Yeah.
to swallow if you're not in a healthy position to start with.
And something that I really took away from our interview with Jennifer Rader, and I would say that, man, I was not in that particular conspiracy theory camp before we talked to her, and then reading more of her books and her daily blog, which Prep School Daily, awesome blog to check out.
It is.
But it's great. But one thing that she had mentioned in our interview was that, like, pharmaceutical companies cannot patent a plant. You can't do it. So they need to make the closest thing they can to those remedies out of science. And now the more I look into that, the more I realize like how true that is. That I'm not saying that there's like chemotherapy growing in your yard, but I'm saying that like stripping the bark off that willow and making a tea may be better or at least as good as taking an aspirin. Like those kinds of things. And there's so much of that. And she outlines a lot of that in her books, but there truly are a lot of homeopathic remedies for a whole lot of things. And I will tell you, I was not a believer. I'm a convert here because I was definitely in the camp of, naturopaths are the Walmart greeter of medicine. And now I'm telling you, I've done a 180 that no, truly, I'm not saying that like go eat eye of newt if you have like a headache or something, but there definitely are a lot of homeopathic remedies for a whole lot of things that you normally take a pill for. That is a fact. And Jennifer Rader has some awesome writings on that. And I'm sure there's people that have better writings than her on that. There probably are naturopaths that have written a bajillion books. I just haven't dug into that as much, but I truly am coming around, I guess, from that idea that maybe naturopaths aren't crazy. Maybe they aren't like one step up from tarot card readers. Like, I think there are actually homeopathic remedies for a lot of things that ail you. So that's one thing that I would like to explore more. And I have a giant piece of property and I have a lot of weird, plants and stuff. I actually have a willow tree that it's of the willow family. I'm not sure which one, but a lot of those light barks, the willows, and I think poplar and maybe alder, those are all kind of the same family of plant, but there's a willow out there that I was just reading the other day about how you can take that. It's the cambium layer that we talked about with Nathan Dickinson, right? That's the cambium layer you can strip back, which is that inner bark. And there's a lot of naturopathic, homeopathic things you can do. Willow is one of those. They're of the aspen family. Aspen is where aspirin came from, right? All that kind of stuff. We talked about that.
Yeah, we did. And there's a lot still to be learned, but I think a lot of people are actually kind of coming around to getting away from the pharmaceutical industry, especially with how much controversy has been going on with the pharmaceutical industry, especially since COVID.
Yeah,
There's been
sure.
a huge turnaround. And that's another thing that we did in the last 6 months. We found a recipe and we made our own bread.
Yeah,
We went out and we had never my wife has made bread before. I had not, other than in a bread maker. So we
sure. But
found
a true sourdough recipe.
no, it was just wheat, salt, yeast, and water.
I think that's always a sourdough, isn't it? No, you didn't use natural yeast. You used store-bought yeast or something. Is that what it
Store-bought
was?
yeast, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And it wasn't a sourdough. It took all of an afternoon, like I think 4 hours total, including the time to let it rise. And we decided to practice making bread, and it was freaking delicious. It was so much better than store-bought.
Really?
Oh
Dude,
yeah, it was
so
great.
there is a great it's like the most boring book ever. There is a great book, a bread book, and it is called Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast. That is the name of the book. And it's literally just a billion very natural, very good for you bread recipes. And it's an awesome book. I forget who wrote it, but yeah, that's the name of it. It's called Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast. And I'll post a link to the book, but that is a book that I've gone through, and we've made tons of different bread recipes out of this one book. But it's just like you said, there's 4 ingredients.
Yeah.
And you
And
can make all kinds of cool bread out of it.
it was super easy. It was actually pretty fun. Like messing around with playing with the dough was actually all right. I get this. I get why bakers can do this all day. This is actually
Right.
kind of fun.
Yeah, and obviously during COVID, every single person in the world did their own sourdough starter, but I definitely did a couple sourdough starters. And the cool thing about that is, I mean, once you have just, the jar with the cheeseclothy stuff, you really don't need anything else. The yeast is out there capturable, and you just need a way to make some wheat, and you can make wheat out of some crazy stuff. We've obviously talked to some people before that you can make your own flour out of anything.
Yes, you can.
Anything with a husk, man, you can make flour out of. So yeah, one of our friends of the show did flour out of acorns, and there's a lot of leaching that has to happen because acorns come from oak. Oak is very tannic, I guess. And we learned that from Nathan Dickinson. So yeah, so acorns are kind of a tough one, but there are so many places that you can get flour product from. You can make flour out of a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So, this is crazy. We're getting like close to an hour. So, what do
Yeah, we are.
I want to chat a little bit about next week, because we're going to get back to the roots. You know what I mean? Like, we are going to do some fun list episodes, like, hey, here's small amounts or no money you can spend on doing cool things, and do some of our kind of old school list style episodes for 102 and 103 leading up to our podcast anniversary on 104. And we are currently working with our winners of our t-shirt contest to make some fun t-shirts. That is going to be awesome to release those and send those out to people. So I'm excited.
I cannot wait. I'm so excited to drop those because the
this is
designs
fun.
are so cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. So, and yeah, huge shout out to obviously everybody who participated in that. That was awesome. I really appreciate that. And then, yeah, after that, I guess I would like to know from people if they like us to do this kind of thing where it's totally no outline and it's just sort of us BSing about preppy stuff, because I think we do have a little bit of knowledge. There's a lot of trial and error. You and I have both done this enough that we've made enough mistakes, and hopefully we can steer people away from those mistakes we have made. And I think this is kind of what most of kind of the prepper podcasts are like, is this kind of format. Probably a little more political, probably a little more religious, but
and definitely a lot more doom and gloom. Yeah.
A lot more doom and gloom. Yeah. We're not talking about end of the world stuff, and I don't really want to. But as far as, the simple, easy, pragmatic things that you and I do, mostly because I think it's honestly because we're doing the podcast, for me, there's some level of like personal guilt where I'm like, man, I can't let the listeners down. I've got to like do this thing. Like,
Right, yeah.
I have to go learn how to tie a knot now.
This has become a practice what you preach thing, and
It really,
it
truly
really
has.
has. Like I have decided to have a small. Well, I say small. It's really become about 40 feet long, uh, but it's a small bundle of 550 cord on my desk. And when I'm sitting waiting for an email reply that I cannot move forward until I get that email reply, or I'm waiting for something to compile, or I'm waiting for a report to come back or something like that, I'll sit there and practice knots, and I'll practice the bowline, and I'll practice the figure eight on a bite. I'll practice the stopper knot. I'll practice the hitches that I know and all kinds of stuff like that. And then I'll just daisy chain everything back together, which for anyone who doesn't know, a daisy chain is literally the first step of your crochet stitch.
That's right. Yeah.
And I didn't put that really together until like a week and a half ago when I was doing it in front of my wife, and she crochets all the time. And I was like, hey, this is your crochet stitch. This is like your opening stitch, and I'm just doing it with my fingers, right?
And it's the one that you can pull it and unravel the whole thing, right? Like if you do it right. That's kind of like the whole, there's a Weezer song about that, I think, right? But you just
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
If you
want to
destroy
my
this sweater,
pull the string as I walk away. That's the daisy chain. It is. And you know what else is funny? Because you probably don't know this because you don't have chickens, but on any like the industrial feed bags, anybody who has horses or chickens or anything about anybody, even probably some of the dog food bags, like the kibble bags, there's a daisy chain on there, and you can do it the right way or do it the wrong way.
Yes, and if you do it the wrong way, you are tying yourself literally in a knot.
Yeah,
trying to get it undone.
If you do it the wrong way, you will simply just take a knife and stab the bag repeatedly.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you do it the right way, it comes undone just smooth as glass.
And that is like that daisy chain stitch. Yeah, that's exactly right. You do it the right way, and it comes right apart. Yeah.
Yeah, but once I'm done getting the original daisy chain stitch and taking it from 35 or 40 feet down to 8 feet or whatever it is, I'll then daisy chain that together and get it down to 5 inches.
Right. Yeah. And for the paracord thing, man, I'm telling you, like 550, but that prepper cord, and I forget I think they just call it prepper cord, but I use that. I mean, it's expensive, but having some of that in all of my like get home bags now, because you can take those individual strands out, and they're pretty beefy. They're pretty strong. For most of your tasks, one of those individual little strands is good. And then one of them is fishing line, and then one of them is like a wick. And that's what's in that prepper cord. And it's awesome. So I think, I don't know what it is, 7 or 8 or 9 strands, but most of them are individual strands of 550 that are very strong. And then there's fishing line and then a wick. So if you have 100 feet of line, what you really have is 700 feet of line plus the jacket plus a really long fishing line plus something you can use as a wick or a fuse or a fire starter. So that, although expensive, is truly worth it.
We've got a spool of that in one of our go bags, and it's there for a reason, but that's not one that I futz around with at my desk.
Right.
That's not my fidget toy.
One hack that I learned was replacing your bootlaces with that is an awesome hack with that prepper cord.
Do you have some 550 bootlaces for my lawn mowing shoes?
Yep. But yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff with that. If you then you can deconstruct that, but still take a piece of it to make some unattractive bootlaces. So you're not walking around with unlaced boots, obviously, but you do have, however many inches or feet of line that you can do all kinds of cool stuff with. If that's just a good commonality across your preps, is you can replace your bootlaces with some of that prepper cord and do all kinds of cool stuff.
I have seen the custom made 550 woven belts,
Well, yeah,
I'll bet
sure.
you could do that with Prep Record and you'd be set forever.
Oh, yeah, you'd be set for life. Yeah, exactly. Of course, then, like, a belt is important. I guess you would have to deconstruct that and take some part of that off and just tie it, you know, use just a
Yeah,
piece of rope
you would, but
for your for
it
your
would be
belt.
worth it if it means you get home. Yeah, you're a little bit
Yeah.
late for dinner, but you're home. Yeah, it would be worth it.
There was a Simpsons episode where, I don't know, I think Apu was taking girls out and spending a bunch of money on them, and the guys were following him around, and Mo Sizlak he goes, man, he's making us all look like a cheapskate. And he looks down at the rope around his belt. He's, oh man, my rope just came undone. And he's got just a rope holding his pants up. Anyway, so yeah, that's an hour. This was fun. I would like to do this. I mean, as you and I both kind of continue our preparedness journey, maybe it makes sense for us to do this every few months and talk about, hey, what have you done over the last 6 or 7 or 8 months to be more prepared? Because, like you said, yeah, we're going to make those mistakes for you, and hopefully there is some actionable intel in here. And then any of the things that we did talk about, we will put in the blog for the episode. So if you haven't signed up for our blog, do that. It's awesome. We send one email a week that just links you to our website. And then everything that we talked about in that week's episode is on the blog with links. If there's an article we talked about, there's a link to that. If there's a product we talked about, there's a link to Amazon. And we just send one email a week. So if you go to our website, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a place that just says, put your email address in to subscribe to the blog. And then every Sunday when I sit down and write the blog, you will get that week's blog with a link to the episode and a link to, all the stuff that we talked about that week.
Yeah, and if you haven't realized it by now, 101 episodes in, we actually do try to crowdsource quite a bit of this. So we do take your feedback and your input and put it to good use. We are always welcoming of feedback. You still have plenty of time to get your questions in for our 2-year podcast anniversary. That's episode 104. Next week is going to be a little more traditional for us with a list episode, but until then, remember, you are your own stakeholder, and we will see you then.